very important to recognize that your being here is a gift. And when I say your being here is a gift, I mean it in two different ways. One way that your being here is a gift, I'm speaking about your life. You know, that you didn't, none of us did anything to earn the privilege of being born and experiencing a human life. I'm sure a lot of people don't consider that a gift. I could understand that a lot of people don't consider it a gift because in the condition in which human beings are existing, there is suffering. And so it would not occur to somebody that's experiencing a neurotic life. It wouldn't occur to somebody that's experiencing a life that is constantly challenging, constantly a struggle, constantly coping or putting up with, constantly trying, constantly changing what you're doing to try and get it right. Get the right people around you, get the right job, get the right house, get the right car. So the way it is for most of humanity, it's understandable that people wouldn't necessarily see their birth to be a gift. But that's only because they don't see things as they don't see things as it is. They don't see things realistically. In order to live a human life, you have to live a limited life. You have to live a life that's limited by time. It's limited in terms of what you're capable of doing. It's limited in terms of, maybe the worst way it's limited is it's limited in terms of it not being able to produce what you want. Life is not able to produce what you want. And one of the things that is kind of the hallmark or the MO for most human beings is that the way they're in life, the way they're living life, is that they're living life in order to be happy, in order to be satisfied, in order to be content, in order to be healthy. And the way it occurs to most people to have that experience is to get it from the world. You know, if I'm not happy, then I look just like the collective consciousness looks, the collective human beings look to see, well, why am I not happy? The state of mind I'm in is leaving me an experience of lacking. Something's missing here. I don't feel happy. They tell me that happiness is available, but it's not available for everybody. It's only available for the people that have the money, or it's only available for the smartest people, or it's only available for the famous people, or it's only available for certain people. Why? Because it's coming from the world. And there's this pursuit of happiness that's occurring in which people are using up their energy every day to try and get what they want. If you look at it, you know, when you wake up in the morning, I mean, the ground day life that most people are experiencing, right, is a repetitious pattern of waking and sleeping, a repetitious pattern of waking and sleeping. And in the awake state, we wake up. And when we wake up, we look at the day in terms of, will my activities today produce what I want? Will the people in my life behave in a way that will allow me to experience the way I want to experience my life? Or will they get in my way? Will they cause me trouble? Will they disturb me? Will they upset me? So I enter into the day with an intention to be happy, with an intention to experience peace and well-being. And then as I get involved in the day, what's happening, everything that's happening that is not consistent with what I want, everything that's happening that's not consistent with the way I want my life to be, occurs to me to be disturbing. Isn't that the way it goes? Everything that shows up when you're living your life, every single day, that's not consistent with you're having what you want, and what you want is an experience, right? What you want is called happiness. What you want is called peace. What you want is called contentment. These are experiences. So what's going to produce the experiences is what we're chasing every single day. Going to work, putting up with going to work, putting up with the boss, putting up with the people, putting up with my body, putting up with the condition of my body. If I have a headache, I'm putting up with my body. If I have a indigestion, I'm putting up with my body. People actually get upset at their body, angry at their body, because their body won't behave the way they want it to behave. So we live in this conditional experience of being alive. It's conditional. My happiness is conditional. I can only be happy under certain conditions, right? I can only be fulfilled under certain conditions. I can only experience peace and contentment under certain conditions. I can only be content if I have what I want. That sounds pretty obvious to most people, Most people wouldn't question that. I can only be content if I have what I want. I can only be content if life occurs to me in a certain way that's consistent with my expectations, then I can be happy. And if I am not happy, it's because my expectations aren't being fulfilled. Other people aren't being the way that I expect them to be. I'm not even happy with myself because the experience I'm having of myself is a process that's determined by my mental activity, isn't it? Your experience of yourself is a process that's determined by your mental activity, right? What do I mean by that? It's a process that's determined by the thought processes that occur in your mind. In other words, what the voice in your head is saying and what the emotions that you experience are and what the sensations that are occurring in your body are. We're constantly being related to that, and that's being produced by mental activity. It's being produced by the thoughts, it's being produced by the emotional experiences, it's being produced by the sensations in the body. So as we go through our life, we're in a direct relationship with this mental state, and this mental state is our conditioning, and that conditioning has been conditioned uniquely for you. Your conditioning is a unique conditioning. Nobody else has your conditioning. Other people have similar conditionings, right? And if somebody has a similar enough conditioning to your conditioning, you call that a friend, right? Somebody's like you are, right? Then there's the basis for a friendship, right? If they're different from the way you are, then not only are they not a friend, but they become suspect in terms of, are they a threat to me? They're weird because they're different. They're not like I am, So you're living in this egotistical realm. You're living in this mental state, this mental realm. And it's constantly feeding you a thought process about what's going on. It's interpreting what's going on. It's telling you what to be afraid of. It's telling you what to get more of all day long. So your everyday life is this function where you're trying to experience this experience of being happy, satisfied, content, and peaceful. And the way you're going to experience this experience is you're going to interact with the world, and you're going to avoid anything that's happening in the world that's not consistent with being happy and satisfied and content, and you're going to pursue anything that's happening in the world that is consistent with being satisfied and content. And this is what you do with your waking state. This is what you do with your energy, pursuing happiness, avoiding threats, trying to get new friends on Facebook, trying to experience well-being. Trying to experience well-being as if it's out there in the world, as if it's a function of your relationship to what's happening that's occurring in your mind. That's where you're going to experience well-being. All you have to do to find out that that's not working is pay attention. That's all you have to do to find out if that's not working. When you get up in the morning, if you really paid attention, if you get up in the morning, if you're really paying attention to what's possible in relationship to what's happening, you'll see very clearly that the state of mind that you're depending on to be happy is not producing happiness. And the way that you can see that most clearly is to understand that there is a possibility of being happy, satisfied, content, and at peace. And the teachings tell us that that possibility of being happy, satisfying, content, and at peace is already an experience that we're having. You already have what you want. Now, if you tell that to most people, you already have what you want, they'll want to argue about that with you, because that's not the way it occurs to them, that they already have what they want. Because what they want is a function of their relationship to the world. What they want is a function of their relationship with other people, their function of relationship with the past, their function of their relationship with the future, their function of their relationship with how they're behaving in the world that's promoting getting more of what they like and getting less of what they don't like. This is a human life happening every single day. And if it continues to happen that way, it will mechanically continue on, because the happiness is never, you never arrive there. You never get where you're headed in life. You're headed to somewhere else. And where you're headed to in reality is you're headed to the end. You're headed to the death. And yet, every day when you get up, you continue to go through the same actions and the same activities, pursuing happiness. And every once in a while, you get a slight hit of happiness. You know, every once in a while you get a slight hit of happiness. The first day of a vacation. No, the first day, no, you're not fully there yet, so that's not happy. Takes the second day, maybe the third day. Maybe by the third day on vacation, you start to experience being wherever you're on vacation at, and you start to relax and be happy. And then the next day, you're preparing to leave. Right? So a week vacation is a one-day vacation, right? Because you don't fully get there until the third day. And after the third day, you're already thinking about having to leave and go home. So everything is changing all the time. You can never stop it. You can never feel secure, because nothing can be depended on. Everything is changing all the time. Now, if you are fortunate enough, if you're blessed, if you experience the grace that will allow you to make contact with the truth, if you're fortunate enough, you will come into contact with the truth, and the truth will tell you that you already have what you want. And it will elaborate on how that's the case. It will tell you that the experience of well-being is an experience you're always already having when you are experiencing what you actually are. The experience of contentment, the experience of peace, the experience of well-being and satisfaction is already an experience you're having all the time. But only if you're experiencing the unconditioned version of yourself, the natural state, which could be called awareness. It's there all the time. It's how you know you're here is that you are aware that you're here. The awareness is the most obvious aspect of your experience of your existence, is it not? The awareness is the most obvious aspect of the experience of your existence. And yet, although that's the case, most people live their life ignorant of their true nature. Most people live their life ignorant of their true nature, ignorant of their true nature as the awareness. And because that's the case, they're paying attention to the mental state constantly. They're identified with the mental state because part of what the mental state provides for a human being is their identity. How do I know who I am? I know who I am because I think I know who I am, right? I think, therefore I am. I know who I am because I think I know who I am. So who do I think I know I am, right? I think I know I'm this body. I think I know I'm somebody's husband. I think I know I'm somebody's brother. I think I know, I'm the person that does this particular job. That's what I think I know, right? So that's the world in which most people are living, in the world in which they think is the world in which they think who they are. And that world can never produce what people want. It can never produce well-being, it can never produce satisfaction, it can never produce peace and happiness. And so if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, you come into contact with these teachings, and these teachings make it possible for you to pay attention in such a way where you through meditation, to pay attention in such a way through meditation where you can perceive, you can see, you can look and see the awareness that is always here. It has no form, it has no shape, and the way you see it is to be it. You can't see it like it's an object, no, but you are experiencing it all the time, and it's the experience you're having of it is called the state of being. You are being what you are all the time. But you're not paying attention to the awareness, you're paying attention to the mental activity because that's how you got educated. That's how you got indoctrinated into this world, is to identify with the mind, identify with the thoughts, identify with the voice in your head and consider that voice to be you. That's the second stage. The first stage is the baby. And the baby is pure awareness, experiencing a body-mind, has no identity, in direct relationship to what's happening all the time, present all the time to what's happening. And then the baby gets a name, the baby's told the baby's the body, the baby starts to experience the thought process, the thinking activity in the mind, and then that begins the process of the human life, and the baby begins pursuing happiness. In the very beginning of life, the baby begins pursuing happiness. And the reason the baby begins pursuing happiness is because when the baby takes on the identity of being the personality identified with the physical body and the voice in the head, the first thing that the baby begins to experience is discontent or unhappiness or being uncomfortable, right? And so as soon as the baby gets into the identity of being a person in a body, suffering begins. Discomfort begins. And so the baby starts to play the pursuit of happiness game right away, starts to play the pursuit of happiness game. Even before school, it's playing the pursuit of happiness game. And that can go on as that pursuit of happiness until the body drops. And for most of humanity, that's what happens. It goes on until the body drops. And so most people never get to the third stage. Most people don't know that there's a third stage of life, right? The third stage of life, right, is when you recognize that your true nature is not the body or the personality. And how does that happen? For some people, it happens spontaneously. They wake up to the truth spontaneously. For other people, it happens because they run into the truth. Like they may take a meditation class, and the talk in the meditation class may be talking about the truth, may be talking about their true nature, and explaining how the true nature is already in a state of fulfillment, that the true nature is already in a state, the consciousness and awareness that you are is already in a state of having what it wants, because what it wants is the experience that it is. What it's having is the experience of what it is as its existence, as consciousness, and therefore that one-liner from Advaita Vedanta, Sat Chit Ananda, is an accurate description of what it's like to be what you actually are. That you exist as consciousness and you're happy. Sat Chit Ananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss. You exist as consciousness and you're happy. So if you are fortunate enough to be graced by the truth, by being exposed to it, right? Then you have begun to be in the process of fully realizing your life. You have begun to be in the process of fully being awake and present to the reality of what you are, and awake and present to life as life is. That's the third stage. And if you get to the third stage, right, then you have fulfilled on the possibility of your life, because now you have the awareness of your true nature, the unconditioned true nature as awareness. You have the awareness of your true nature, and you have learned how to behave as a human being. So now you can play the game of life and be happy at the same time, because you're no longer attempting to get the happiness, the well-being, the satisfaction, and peace of mind from the world. You're now, through practice of meditation and through deepening your understanding and practicing in your daily life, you have begun to experience being connected to the source of your well-being, which is the awareness. And as you continue to practice and be aware of yourself as the awareness and be aware of the truth of life, you stop being dependent on the ever-changing world. You stop being dependent on the impermanent reality that is constantly occurring in the mind, in the body, and in the world. Everything is changing all the time. But now, through the practice of awareness and through paying attention to the actual source of awareness, by directing your attention to the experience of awareness itself and being in that experience as awareness itself and touching the reality of well-being, touching the reality of that. In meditation, we touch the reality of well-being by moving attention away from the thought process, paying attention to the body breathing. And when we pay attention to the body breathing, we go from the unreal personality to the real awareness. And although we don't stay there very long because of the habit pattern of thinking and the identification with thinking and the idea that life is about survival instead of being happy, and that pulls our attention back to thinking. So we don't stay in the state of awareness for a long time, maybe only for a few moments. But for those few moments, we've made contact with what is actually real. We've made contact with the source of well-being. That's why Richie Davidson and the people who've done the brain science study on meditation say that well-being is a practice. It's a practice. You have to practice well-being because you're in a condition in which it's not available. So if you want to experience well-being, you have to practice moving your attention out of that condition, coming to experience a transcendental wisdom and a transcendental state that's outside of the mind and outside of the body and is always available. So if you pass the initial test of practicing meditation, which is the beginning of the practice, that's the initial test. Because in the beginning of the practice, the mental activity will resist the practice of meditation because the mental activity sees the practice of meditation as a threat. Why? Because if you move your attention away from the thinking activity, who you thought you were doesn't exist. You get that? If you move your attention away from the thinking process, who you thought you were doesn't exist. And the system that is producing the illusion that you are real as a personality will try and prevent you from being away from it, because if you're away from it, it means that you're going to die. So the system is not nefarious. The system is not working against you. The system actually is trying to keep you alive as the personality, but it doesn't know, the program doesn't know it's a program. The program doesn't know it's a program. It just plays the material from the program, which is the voice in your head and the mental activity. It just keeps playing that because you've identified yourself with that when you were a baby. So if you're going to get to the third stage of life, you disidentify yourself with what you have identified yourself with. You start not identifying with the thinking activity. You start not identifying with the mental states. And when you're not identifying with the thinking activity and the mental states, you have the opportunity to be present as what you actually are and be present to the life the way life actually is. And through practicing, you gradually can open up and expand this experience of being present, expand this experience of well-being. And the process is self-fulfilling. If you practice meditation and you stay involved with a commitment to learning the transcendental wisdom and applying it in your life, it eventually starts to be self-fulfilling, because once you make contact with your true nature, once you experience the truth in terms of knowing that you are happy, you are free, you are at peace, you are content. When you're in the experience of your true nature these experiences are naturally available to you. And once you experience that, you stop seeking it in the world, you end the seeking of the pursuit of happiness, so you save yourself all that energy of pursuing happiness in the world, and you begin to focus your attention and focus your energy and focus your practice on realizing your true nature, so that can be a consistent experience. And if you do that, it will start to show up more and more in your life. If you do that, if you do the practices consistently, and if you study the transcendental wisdom and you understand it, right, the experience of being happy, content, and peaceful will start to show up in your life. You'll find yourself having experiences that are unexplainable in terms of they're not being caused by the world, they're not being caused by other people, they're not being caused by what you have, by your possessions. The source of this experience of well-being and happiness is being caused by the unconditioned natural state that is always there. So if you have started, if you understand, if you have a conceptual understanding of the teaching, right? If you have a conceptual understanding of the teaching, then you'll start to pay attention to your everyday condition in which you're referring or you're relating to the state of mind all the time as your way of experiencing your life. And the state of mind is not being in connection and aware of life itself, it's being in connection and aware of an interpretation of life based on your past experience. And so through the teachings, you come to understand that as long as you're limited to paying attention to the mental state as your experience of yourself in your life, you can never be happy. Once this is seen, that becomes your motivation to realize your true nature. If you realize that you will never be able to succeed in being happy and peaceful and satisfied in life by pursuing happiness in the world, once you see that that's the case, then you can be motivated to do the practice as consistently as possible, starting with the formal meditation practice. And then once you get the hang of it, once you understand what it means to be present, once you understand what it means to direct your attention away from mental activity, to stop identifying with the mind, once you understand that, then you can start to practice informally, which means as you're going through your day, right, you keep resting as awareness for brief moments as often as possible. And the way you do this when you do it informally is a little different than the way you do it formally. Formally, all you're doing is the meditation, just sitting in a posture that the body can be still and focusing on the body breathing. All you're doing is that, your formal practice. When you do the informal practice, you're actually moving to the more superior form of meditation, because now you're doing it while you're in action. You're doing it while you're living your life. You're doing it while you're interacting with other people. You're doing it while you're driving your car. You're doing it while you're sitting on the toilet. You're doing it while you're cooking food. And you're paying attention all the time as you're doing the things that need to be done in life, as you're meeting the challenges that you're faced with in life. You're paying attention all the time to see, am I in a state of tranquility or am I disturbed? And every time you see that you're disturbed, you allow yourself to notice the awareness that is here. Every time you feel disturbed, you allow yourself to notice the awareness that is here. That's called being present, getting yourself present. So if I'm upset and I'm experiencing a lot of emotional energy because I'm angry, right? And I'm doing these practices, I notice I'm angry, I notice it's a mental state, I notice there's a voice in my head having angry thoughts, I realize I'm very disturbed, right? But I understand the truth now, I know what the possibility is, so what do? I remember my true nature, I recognize my true nature as awareness itself. While this emotional disturbance is occurring, I notice my true nature as awareness itself. And if I can succeed in noticing my true nature as awareness itself and be present at that time when this energy is there, this emotional energy, this anger energy, it will transmute that angry energy into energy to be present. This is transmutation. Transmutation is one of the functions of the practice in terms of realizing when the energy, when the chi, which is the life force energy in your body, is arising in the form of anger or rising in the form of agitation and upset. But if during the time that's happening in a mental state, you can recognize that it's a mental state and you can recognize your true awareness and presence yourself, that you will transmute that energy. That energy will come from being negative energy to becoming positive, creative energy. So the more you practice, the more possible it becomes for you to experience your real nature, to experience your real, true nature as awareness itself. That's why practice is, in every tradition that I've studied, practice is there. So it must be there because it's necessary, right? Right? So what you have to do as a student, and what you have to do as somebody who is on the path, if you're in this room and if you're listening to my voice, you are on the path. Get over it. You are on the path, right? And what you're on the path to is waking up and realizing your true nature so that you can experience being happy, satisfied, content, and peaceful in this life. So that when death comes to the body, you will have been practiced sufficiently enough to experience your true nature, and that true nature wasn't born and doesn't die. It only lives in the ever-present now. It only lives in the present moment, and so it cannot die. In order for something to die, it has to live in time, right? Yeah. What you are does not live in time, therefore it cannot die. And the realization of that is a real possibility through practice, through understanding the teachings, the wisdom teachings, and through the necessary commitment to do these practices while you're in your everyday life, so that while you're in your everyday life, you can experience peace, contentment, and satisfaction, regardless of what's going on in your mind. Regardless of what's going on in your mind. Yeah. When you make that distinction between the awareness and the mental state, you have the power to be free from the mental state. It can be disturbed, and it will be disturbed, but you're not what that is. You're the awareness of that, and the awareness that you are of the mental state is never disturbed. That's what the promise is, that's what the truth is, right? But it's not free lunch. Very few of us have been blessed to have this experienced spontaneously. The rest of us are going to have to do it through practice, through gradual realization, until we get to a point where we turn the tide. If you do this with enough commitment and enough practice, eventually there will be a critical mass of your true identity, and once that critical mass of your true identity is in existence, right, you're home safe. Yeah. You'll recognize that no matter what the mind produces, right, that you are always free from that.